G'day folks, Greg Budd from Bud's Baits here.
Welcome to the African Lure Craftsman. In the ensuing episodes, we'll be taking you along while we design and handcraft timber lures and hopefully get out into the water to use them. I've designed lures for some of the big boys in the industry and I sell my lures worldwide. I'll do my best to show you some of the hacks I've learned along the way. Stay with us and experience the wonders of casting lures to bass, giant catfish, tigerfish in Zimbabwe, which I'm fortunate to call my home, and cross borders with us as we'll target the denizens of the deep all along the African coast in magical places such as Mozambique. Through it all, I'll share a bit of my daily life and business experience, which can be quite tough in Zimbabwe at times, as we take you along to run the daily gauntlet of survival. Subscribe and click the notifications button to stay with us.
Welcome back to another episode of the African Lure Craftsman, where today we're going to start for you the build of the Robust Garfish. The Robust Garfish is a predominantly an Australian species of garfish. I think you get them in the entire Indo-Pacific region and around there, as well as into the colder waters. But I think it would be a fantastic build on this piece of wood. What I've done so far is I've downloaded a picture from the internet of a robust gar. I've printed it out to size, so that between the fork of the tail or the end of the caudal peduncle and the mouth is 22 centimeters. I think that's an ideal size, one for the size of the actual baitfish and two for our piece of wood as well. So what I'll do next is I'll trace it out so we can get an exact replica of that particular baitfish onto this piece of wood, and from there we'll start shaping. So what I'm going to do to start off this build is, as I say, I've actually printed this out to size, so between the mouth and the tail or the end of the caudal peduncle here is 22 centimeters. In the build I'm going to include the beak, and the beak or the bill I'm going to have a wire construct through the bill with the toe point, I think, on the end. You think that's going to make it a bit of a weak point? I don't think so, because I'm going to try and do a couple of tricks there to build it up, and I'm obviously going to use a very, very thick gauge wire. This build, I think, is going to be in 4 sections. So basically what I'd do is I'd look at the sections we've got here, and I think I'd do the first one just behind the gill plate there, the second gill plate or the fin here. I would do the next one, pretty even sections here, and I'd do the last one measuring that. I'm just going to do it by hand round about here, and I think that would be our perfect construct for a subsurface surface garfish that will have a very nice snake action and look very, very realistic. This is in black and white, as I said before, but the colors on this particular type of garfish are fantastic. The white band you see here is a bright, bright silver. They've got a nice blue back with green sheen. And over here, just below the fin, you've got a little dark blotch, which I think is a really nice, prominent little feature on these baitfish, and something that I often think is a strike trigger in creating lures and all that. Funny little blotches like that, big eyes. Another thing I love with lures, and I'll probably make the eyes a little bit bigger, but we've got to keep it realistic. A lot of shine, a lot of silver. They've got a fantastic side here into the belly with striations going down, which catch a lot of light and shine. So I think we can actually make this into a fantastic little swim bait. Last episode, when I was going through my little box of tricks, the long forgotten box with all those lure forms and things in it, I found this little guy here. I think this was just a casting plug I was trying to make. I can't even remember. But while we're on the subject of this garfish, and having shown you how I was going to do this beak, that's kind of like how I'm going to do it, except we're going to have the toe point on the end here, but we're going to be using a lot thicker wire. But just playing with this, you'll see how strong this actually is. That is only 0.9 wire. I think I'm going to be using 1.6 or 2 millimeter wire on the end here, just for the beak, and that'll go through the garfish, and we'll have one join in between each intersection. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have a wired through design right through to the tail. Why I want to do this is because I want to take this lure to Mozambique on my next fishing trip, and I want to try and use it to catch some sort of game fish. I don't know what we'll be targeting, but you often see bait fish skittering along the top, and it might be the ideal opportunity to use a lure like this. I haven't used swim baits in the sea often. This will be almost a first, so we'll give it a go. And that'll be the reason I'm doing the wire through here, because if you get something half decent, you're going to want your toe point connected to your hook points, and they will all be, I think my hook points on here will be pretty simple, something like that, and they will be joined to the main wire, which will run through them. So there's our piece of wood. What we're going to do now is take a tracing of our template here, and we're going to transfer it to the wood. What I like to do is, when I make a swim bait, I always do it in one piece. That's obviously the better way to do it, and then I'll cut the sections later. I like to use V-cuts when I cut, so you can get the joints of the body in close proximity to each other. I would normally, on a deeper bodied bait, use 2 attach points, but in this one I'm just going to use 1, and for the action we need to get, I think 1 joint is going to be better. So we'll transfer this onto here, we'll shape it in one piece, we'll add the gills, we'll add all the detail on here, and then once we complete with that, we'll cut it into sections. So that's where we're going to go now. Let me continue. Got an old piece of tracing paper here. We've mentioned before, things are very hard to find in Zimbabwe, so I try and reuse them again and again. You'll see in the corner here another little popper I made that's called my UDM, or my upside down mullet. That's something that's going to be tested in Mozambique as well. But anyway, let's get this onto paper quickly. What I'll do is I'll just get the body onto tracing paper first. I will then trace the tail separately in scale, and I'll use that on a separate template, because we'll cut the tail and the fins out of polycarbonate to make them strong, and we'll give them some nice detail with the fin striations and the tail striations in those, so that they look very, very realistic. Remembering, guys, that this is actually a totally freestyle build. I've never done one of these before. I have done swim baits, and there's going to be a lot of guesswork as we go along. I think with my experience we can make it swim fairly well straight off, and obviously to do that we're going to have to weight it. Now weighting is something you've got to be careful with, because remember, we don't want this nose forward, tail sinking or anything like that. We want it weighted fairly evenly. So what I'll probably do with this is weight each section. So it sits on top of the water or slightly subsurface, suspends, something like that. And when we get to that, I think I'll know more about it actually. So for now, I'm also going to do all the facial detail, the placement of the eyes, the gill detail and fin detail, because we want to have this thing as close to realistic as possible, as close to real as possible, sorry. Bit tongue-tied here while I'm drawing. Okay, that fin, nice little fin shape, that, really like it. We're going to try and get all the little bumps and everything where they're supposed to be. And I'm also going to draw, not that it comes in, it'll come more into the painting, just so I know where this lateral line stripe is going. Not that I'll be using it in the tracing or the transfer to wood. This gives me a better sense of detail. So I think that's pretty much it. As you can see, my piece of paper isn't big enough for the whole thing, but I'll get those later on the same scale. And there we have our robust garfish transferred to paper. So we've got our garfish traced, we've got our lines very thick on that. I'm going to flip it over now and transfer it to this wood. Let's just hope it comes out very well. Sometimes you do have to go over these things a couple of times. I'm already getting excited about that because that shape is looking fantastic. And I'll tell you why I chose a garfish to do whilst I do this. One is the elongated shape makes for a very good swim action. Particularly in a swim bait, you can get a very nice S-waver type snaky action through the water. It looks great on a top water if you're doing a top water bait, and it looks great subsurface as well, or at any depth in the water column actually. But particularly for a top water or subsurface bait, I think it's just a fantastic shape. The other reason, of course, is this little guy here is the fast food of the sea. I mean, if I was a fish, I'd eat him. I think everyone would. You get them distributed widely across the various regions of the world and the various oceans where you get game fish. And it's actually a tasty little guy anyway. I mean, I don't know how many of you eaten garfish, but you catch 10 or 20 of these. Fine little fry up, that is. Anyway, so let's get this done and not waste time. I think we're going to have a lot of fun doing this lure, and I'm just really looking forward to getting the colors onto this and getting the build done. We've now transferred our tracing to the piece of wood. I am absolutely excited about this shape, I've got to say, because I don't know, sometimes when you put a shape on wood, you can just see everything that's going to happen with it. You can see the end product. And I think this is going to be a little beauty. Very difficult to make swim baits, and certainly something that's on the scale of commercial custom production is I would say is quite hard, unless you're going to mold it. And that might be a plan with this, is take a mold off the whole body when I do it, or even off the sections once I cut it. That might be a plan. But I'm very, very excited about that. Unfortunately, I can't go on with this right now because, unfortunately, my belt sander hasn't got a belt. I've ordered those from South Africa. Zimbabwe, as we've said, very hard to get anything. I cannot get belts for my sander, and I'm not talking about the sanding belts, I'm talking about the drive belts. And they are on the way with a runner right now who probably is going to imminently arrive either today or tomorrow. Normally when that happens, I'm called away on a moment's notice, and I have to shoot off down some terrible roads to a certain destination in town, pick up my stuff, and then come back and continue with my job. So that's all we have for you today, is the shaping, the tracing. I think we can get excited about this. It's going to be a good build. I hope you've enjoyed. Hit like, subscribe, and stay with us for the next episode.